for the second recording here, I wanted to move into this Chase and Simon article that I read some years later. And what I'd like you to do is turn to page, I think it's, 7 out of 28. Let me see if I have the article here. 60 and 61 of the article kind of has some graphs. Let me kind of explain to you. You don't have to read the whole thing. What they basically did is they took grandmasters, experts, and novices, and they showed them chess positions. Now, Sam, as a person that has some experience with chess, are there kind of prototypical positions that usually happen in chess playing games?
Yeah, so like bishops can only move a certain way, knights can only move.
Yeah, and you have pieces over here and over there, and there's kind of typical positions, and there's also kind of random positions. So what they did in their study, you would want to write down, they basically gave these novices and these grandmasters positions, either random positions where the pieces would just kind of be interspersed, not in the right way of a chess playing situation, or much more organized, where a bishop would be over here attacking another piece, a rook would be there, a queen would be there, kind of normal chess positions. And they tested the memory when it was organized versus when it was random. So they showed these positions to novices and experts. What do you think they found when they were normal chess positions that a normal chess player would see? What do you think, Bella, they would find as far as the memory for these people?
Probably the memory of a master chess player was better.
Exactly the case. The main result was the master chess player had a much better memory when the pieces were arranged in a, we did the hierarchical versus random, but this is different, in a normal chess position situation. If you look at it up there, they kind of have that. You can look through it, class A player, beginner, so on and so forth. When it was a random position, Brittany, what do you think happened when it was a random position where the pieces were just kind of put on the board in a random way?
It's probably not as good.
Yeah, it turned out that recall was approximately the same for both the grandmaster and novice. So what conclusion, so you know the method, you know the result, what conclusion do you think Chase and Simon reached about expertise in chess? I think it says it right at the beginning. Where can you go to actually see what the main results were if you're looking in the paper? The beginning of the discussion, right? See if I can find the discussion in here. What do you think their main conclusion was of what makes an expert an expert? I don't know if I actually see a discussion in here, or a section labeled discussion. No, not so much. What conclusion do you think they reached? Why would people be experts? Desha, what conclusion do you think they reached?
Better memories, and they're able to remember what piece goes where, when, and why.
So they basically came to the conclusion in this article that you can read through on your own a little bit yourself, that the reason that an expert chess player is an expert is they've memorized all these positions. They have a better memory for these. Are there books out there for chess players to? Yes, there are. But I have to tell you, my reaction to this, I actually, when I read this article in graduate school in Binghamton, I actually got rather upset by this. Can anybody share why I might get upset by the fact that the basic conclusion here is somebody is an expert because they simply had a better memory?
It's not really problem solving, they're just memorizing things.
They were basically saying that the reason an expert is based on just memory. What kind of study did they do? Did they do a longitudinal or cross-sectional study?
It would be cross-sectional, wouldn't it?
Why would you say cross-sectional there?
Because it involved 3 different groups and it was conducted at the same time. Longitudinal would be one group for a very long time.
So this is important to know. They did a cross-sectional type of study here. They looked at these 2 groups. They said, we have these groups with poor memory, these ones with good ones, given this situation. Is there a potential flaw with that? Yeah, you don't know how this kind of stuff really necessarily developed over time. You don't necessarily know that. Could you do a longitudinal study on this? You could. And the reason I got so upset, which you may want to write down for your notes, I got to the point where when I was losing all those games, and then I started getting better, tell me what happens as you start getting better at chess. Is it just memory? I mean, there are books, and I started looking at some books, traps you could play and good openings. There are those books out there, but what do you think I thought as far as why I got better?
A lot of it is strategy and improvisational.
A lot of it is strategy. You could learn to predict what your opponent is doing. You could learn to predict many moves ahead. Sam, are you able to do this?
Yeah.
You're able to predict. You're able to orchestrate the pieces. When you're just a novice, for somebody like Madison, when you're just a novice, you just kind of make little moves for others in the class. There's the horse trick, or there's the pin with the bishop. But when you get really, really good, you get all your pieces kind of aligned, and it's really about creativity and problem solving. So I actually got rather upset when I was being told by this article that the only reason I was an expert was for what purpose? What reason?
Your memory.
Memory. Memory had a little something to do with it. If I'd actually hoped to attain from 1700 higher levels, I could have actually started memorizing books and all that, but I actually rather enjoyed the creative problem-solving aspects of things. So the cross-sectional study had these types of problems associated with it. What kind of approach? So I shared with you, what did I call the case that I was sharing with you? What kind of approach would that be called? We said it was qualitative. What was the other word I used to describe that?
Phenomenological.
Yeah, it was kind of a personal phenomenological approach based on me as a chess player. Was I a researcher at that point? No, I didn't know anything about psychology. I was just a chess player. Could that actually potentially be useful if in graduate school, if I didn't want to do my clapping study or my word recognition study for setting up a study? Could phenomenological be good for setting up a study? Yeah, you get a lot of information. So what would be nice, and I actually tried to look it up in a research-based class, maybe a longitudinal study. What could you do to make this, if you really wanted to get at people's experiences, could you set up, what would your longitudinal study look like here? Somebody was just learning the game. So somebody like Madison, and you decided that you actually wanted to get good at this and you had just started. What could be set up?
You could look at somebody who starts at a novice level and track their progress.
Maybe track their progress, have kind of questionnaires, semi-structured interviews, tell me about planning ahead, orchestrating pieces. And I could actually share an endpoint to the story. When I got my job in Illinois, in '91. I hadn't played chess in many years, but early in 2000, my students actually got me a chessboard at Rockford College, and I started playing a little bit again. How do you think it was for me to play? And I actually showed my wife and daughter how to play. How do you think my level was after not playing for about 15 years? Was I a 1700 ranked player at that point in time? Taliban? What do you think it was for me? How was I when I got back?
I think you were still good, but not as good as you were.
I wasn't nearly as good as I was. Now, I showed my wife and daughter how to play, and we started playing games. You used to play without my queen, a big piece on the board, and they started playing with me games, and they were hoping eventually, if I taught them how to do this, that they would get better and win. Do you think that happened for them? No, because what started happening for me as I started playing more and more games with them?
You started getting better again.
My learning curve was what? Compared to their learning curve. So Madison, if I showed you how to play, and I haven't played chess in a long time, would you have a learning curve?
Probably
You would. But how would my learning curve be compared to yours?
still slightly higher because you're still teaching me how to play.
I'm teaching you how to play, and would I start remembering all the things from 20 years ago? Yeah, the learning curve. So they never won. And we haven't played in a long time again, but this is expertise. So I actually got really upset about the idea that the only reason somebody is better at chess playing is simply due to memory reasons. As you think about your future careers, you might want to think about things that are important to you. My phenomenological experience as a kind of a case report could have served actually as the basis for developing an actual study. Some of you as researchers may want to take some of that. You know, did we go over the evidence-based ladder on things from opinion all the way up to Cochrane review? Did we do that in this class? I don't think we did. Let me share just a little bit with you. A case report is very low evidence-based. The next level would actually be to set up a study, basically. So you could go from just a simple case report, qualitative, phenomenological, and then you could actually take it a step up to do an actual study. Did they do studies in the Chase and Simon thing? Yeah, but it was cross-sectional, and I think longitudinal study could have actually been useful. I tried to find something with that, but as you think about your future in research, and even in your final project, you'll be asked to come up with something. So we've had different approaches here. What are the three types of research designs we've talked about here to conclude this part of our equation? What are the three approaches that we've discussed here to researching this issue of chess playing? What did they do in their research? What kind was it?
Cross-section.
Cross-sectional. You take two different groups at the same moment in time. You'd like to assume that this is the reason you're smarter, but there are limitations there. You can't assume that. What's the other approach we talked about potentially doing? Longitudinal. You're tracking people over time. That could be useful with a semi-structured interview to ask about things. I know when I got better, I knew I could start seeing ahead, planning ahead, orchestrating the pieces. You may want to write some of these things down. Sam, are you able to do that to some extent?
Yeah.
Kind of plan ahead, see what your opponent is going to do, know how to block that, get all your pieces working together on the board, not just play little pins and horse tricks with X, Y, and Z, that it's much more strategic than that as you're getting creative. And then the other experience that's not really a study, but the phenomenological approach of getting good data, because that could serve as the basis for really doing a true experiment and a true study. Comments or questions about that? Does that make sense for everybody? Okay.